Jesus Christ, my hand is so fucking heavy right now. God, I can't pick it up. What is going on here? I've never had my hand be so heavy as it is right now.
Wah, wah, wah.
Candyman is brought to us by director Nia DaCosta and stars Yahya Abdul-Mateen Part 2, Tayana Paris, and Coleman Domingo. Okay, so it's finally here. Candyman 2019, or I guess Candyman 2021 now, because this fucking movie was supposed to come out over a year ago. But like many other movies over the past year or so, it did end up getting pushed back and delayed due to just crazy shit going on in the world. But it's finally here now, and being a big fan of the original Candyman, and by fan I mean that it scared the living shit out of me as a kid, I've been eagerly anticipating this movie. However, I will admit that I did have some concerns. Were those concerns founded? Some of them, but not all of them. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put something to rest that everybody's been wondering since this movie got announced. This is not a reboot. This is a straight up sequel to the original Candyman. It is all new characters and kind of a new place and of course a new time, but the events from the original film did happen in this world and they are discussed in this film quite a bit. Now I don't want to go into too much detail about the story for fear of ruining anything. The short of it is that Yahya Abdul-Mateen's character Anthony is a painter, and while at one point in time he was seen to be a bright upcoming star in the painting world, he has kind of lost his muse. And upon learning of the legend of Candyman, he decides he wants to start making art based on the legend. However, while doing this, he starts to investigate the legend and go down a rabbit hole that I don't think he was totally prepared for. Bad shit starts to happen to Anthony and pretty much everybody around Anthony. People start to remember the legend and people start to die. Now starting out, I want to go on record and say that this movie is directed beautifully. Nia DaCosta does a fantastic job here. This movie is very visually striking, and not even just the visuals, just the storytelling as a whole is done extremely well. DaCosta displays an expert apt hand behind the camera, and while I wasn't looking forward to the Marvels or whatever they're calling Captain Marvel 2, I am now just because I know that she is directing it. If you like nothing else about this movie, you can't deny that she did a fantastic job here. And yes, I know making a movie is a collaborative effort. You've got directors of photography, editors, directors, actors, etc., but the director is what keeps everything in line. The director is the one that runs the show, and she ran this show fantastically. And that high bar of quality extends to the performances as well. I honestly don't think there's a bad performance in the bunch. There are some questionable characters, the way that they're written and everything, but the way that everyone is performed is really great. Mateen's Anthony is the standout here to me. And yeah, I know that everybody's talking about Nathan Stewart Jarrett's character that was kind of like the comic relief of the movie, and he was great. Like I said, everybody here was great. But Mateen was just fantastic. I was absolutely on board with this character and everything he was doing, and it was totally because of his performance. Even when the character is making more questionable decisions due to the script. Now, I also want to comment on the violence and gore in the movie. The original Candyman was a pretty violent, gory flick, and this one does follow suit. It's violent and gory, but admittedly, it's not as violent and gory as I was expecting. Now, it has its moments, but a lot of these moments are like just off screen, or you'll just see part of the violence. But I never felt like they were doing that to like censor anything or get a different rating. In fact, even though I am a bit of a gore hound, I kind of like this approach. It added to the mystique of it all. And while there is that part of me that wants to see all the blood and guts and the over-the-top violence, the way that they did it here was much more artistic. It really fit in line with the movie and the tone that it was going for. And I liked it. It added the mystique to it all. It made you really pay close attention to everything there so you could pick up every single little detail. And there are quite a few details in the background of this movie to pick up, especially with mirrors. When you go to watch this movie, anytime a reflective surface shows up, just pay attention, there's probably something in it. Now, with all that good stuff being said, there are definitely some shortcomings that we have to address as well. While the movie is directed wonderfully and it looks fantastic, there is one thing about it that while it doesn't look terrible, it does stand out. and that would be the CGI effects. There's not a ton of them, but when they show up, they're not the best. The actual effect in some cases is fine, but it's more the movement and animation that throws it a bit off. We get some CGI people that are like thrown up against things and dragged around and all that, and it just doesn't quite look right. There's also a moment right at the end of the film that a lot of people are probably looking forward to, and a whole lot of people are going to be talking about after seeing this movie. And while the idea behind this moment is debatable whether it's good or not, that doesn't matter. The effect that's used uses a lot of CGI, and it's just not that great. It's not awful, but the CGI effects that they do use kind of stand out. Thankfully though, they don't use a ton of CGI. It seems like they used a lot of practical effects. Either that or the CGI effects they did use look practical and they're really good, and the other ones just stood out like a sore thumb. Either way, it was noticed. Now you may have noticed that I haven't really talked about the story much, and I did say in the beginning I didn't want to give too much away for fear of spoilers. However, I did still want to let you guys know what I thought of that story. And the story in this film is where the majority of the problems with it show up. Now this movie is probably slower than some people are expecting it to be, but if you go back to the original Candyman, that was a fairly slow burn as well. And I did actually enjoy the story to a degree. Like the vast majority of the movie, while it is kind of a slow burn, I was liking how it was giving us information. I liked the direction they were going for the most part. They were taking the original story. They weren't just like shitting all over it. They were taking that story and expanding upon it. And I don't mind the direction they went with this expansion. I don't necessarily like love it, but I don't mind it. There are a few conveniences in it, especially with the naming of some of the characters. I can't really elaborate on that too much without spoiling something, but just know that there is a character in this movie that has a name that is just way too spot on and convenient. But whatever, that really didn't bother me. What did actually bother me about the movie was the final act of the film. The movie takes its time to build upon the original story and build us up this new story as the film goes on. You know, like good storytelling and all. Shocker. But right there in the end, at the final quarter of the film, the payoff of the movie, it's like everything just unravels, becomes unhinged, and kinda goes to shit. There is shit that happens in the last quarter of this film that just doesn't make sense within the rules that they've built for this universe. There's actually quite a few things that happen right there at the end of the movie that are just kinda out there. It's almost like a different person directed it. But chief among them for me was the fact that Candyman's rules suddenly changed. Candyman as a character has always been fairly indiscriminate. He comes after the people that say his name 5 times in the mirror. He gives no shits about everybody else. He's kind of like Pinhead and his box. You fuck with the box, Pinhead's coming after you. You fuck with the name in the mirror, Candyman's coming to get your ass. And for the most part, that's how it works in this movie. But in the end of the movie, suddenly characters can say his name and he doesn't even approach them, but then other characters cannot say his name and they just get wiped the fuck out. And I get why these characters had to go, but why not somehow like fool them into saying his name or something? Because not only is this thing in the end just kind of go against all the rules that have been set for years, including in this movie, the way that this character is able to do this thing is a bit contrived. It was really disappointing to me because I honestly was really enjoying the movie up to this point. But unfortunately, they just didn't quite stick the landing. It's not like a terrible ending, but it definitely does not line up with the rest of the flick. It's just really rushed and inconsistent. It almost feels like reshoots. It doesn't feel like the end of this movie I've been watching all this time. Now we also got a real quick talk about the themes and subtext in the film, because they're definitely there. Now this wasn't surprising to me. I expected it. Look at the original Candyman. The entire lore of Candyman has deeply ingrained in its DNA racism, gentrification, and many other social issues. So it was expected, especially in the current day climate. Upon seeing the trailer for the movie, I was really worried that it was going to be super preachy and really heavy-handed and in your face. And I was happy to see that the movie was never preachy, but it was heavy-handed as shit. We get it. Racism and gentrification definitely exist, and they are a cause of the events in this movie. And I'm not saying that's something that should be overlooked, but holy fuck, how many times can you say it and throw it right there in somebody's face in this movie? Like many of the film's other shortcomings, this doesn't totally derail the movie, but after a while, it does become a bit much. And I look back to the original 1992 Candyman. It dealt with many of the same issues that this movie does, but it did it with a subtlety that made it far more effective. There's nothing wrong with having these themes in a film. It's just when you come across so heavy-handed, you start to lose your audience. And I'm sure there will be people that will champion this film and talk about how it's so great because of these things. And hey, you know what? Good on you. I'm happy that you enjoyed it. Because I enjoyed the film film as well. I even enjoyed it exploring those themes. I just wish it was a little bit more subtle about it and not so blatantly in your face. Now, one more thing about the movie that I didn't really like, and that would be all of Candyman's victims. And that was the problem, that I didn't like any of his victims. Everyone that Candyman kills in this movie is an absolute despicable piece of shit. And the movie goes real far to show you how much of a piece of shit these people are. Every time one of them gets taken out, you're waiting for it. You want them to die. The problem is since you don't really have any type of connection to these characters because there's absolutely nothing that's likable about them, when someone does die, you don't really care. Besides the fuck yeah, I'm glad that motherfucker's dead moment, there's not really much else here. That also gives you a sense of security with many of the characters in the film. You know who is and is not going to make it. It is never a mystery. And when some characters are put in danger and the movie wants you to think that, uh-oh, something might happen to them here, you know nothing's gonna happen to them. And while I know, yeah, this isn't the only movie to do that, when other movies do it, I call them on it too. Also, on whether or not the movie is scary or not, for me, no, it really wasn't that scary. It is creepy and has a hell of an atmosphere, but as far as scary, no, it's not. Now, thankfully, the movie doesn't really rely on jump scares. If there are any, they were really well done because I don't remember. It is a lot more about a tone and feel of the film. It has a very creepy feel and does kind of get under your skin at times. But scary like the original Candyman, no, it's not. The original Candyman kept me up at night. It made me not want to fall asleep. This one, no, not really. However, I did enjoy the creepy vibe. Guys, I know it kind of sounds like I'm a bit divided on the new Candyman, and I am. However, I do lean a bit more towards I did enjoy the film. It's a very well-made movie with some fantastic performances that explores and expands upon the lore that we all know. It does have a few character issues, can be heavy-handed as shit at times, and the final quarter almost derails the whole thing. Thankfully though, it doesn't, and overall I will say that Candyman is a pretty good time. If you enjoyed the original, you're probably gonna find something here to like. And while in my opinion, it doesn't surpass the original, it is definitely better than any of the sequels we ever got, and it is absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
Candyman 2021 absolutely has its issues, but it also does so much right that it is worth seeing, especially for fans. So if you're looking for a more thought-provoking horror flick for the night, you don't mind a bit of heavy-handedness with your horror, then check out Candyman and I think you'll have a great time. So there it is, guys, my review of Candyman. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits that go along with that, like these guys. If you like what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Caprini Green.
You should say it.
Candyman.
Say his name.
Candyman!
Now, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very divisive film. There are going to be people that have a whole lot of differing opinions on it. And while I was a bit middle of the road overall on it, I didn't think it was terrible. And really, anybody who says that this movie is terrible, you don't know terrible Candyman. Go back and watch the original Candyman sequels. That's bad Candyman, especially the third one. You want to see a bad Candyman movie? That is bad Candyman. Which, by the way, the entire time I've recorded this video, I'm looking at my reflection in the lens, and I've said that name probably like 50 times now, and I'm still alive. I mean, I might not release any more videos after this one, and that could be cause for concern. So yeah, if it's all true and this ends up being my last video, it's been real.